For more on this, we're also now being joined by Dr. Anna Cohen, Professor of Non-Proliferation and Terrorism Studies, Middlebury Institute. Sir, thank you so much for joining us on WION World is One. Of course, big development coming here. Ismail Haniyeh and one of his bodyguards killed in Tehran. So I wanted to ask you, how do you assess the situation in the region at the moment? Does this raise the specter of a wider war? And do you think this will lead to a hardening of stance when it comes to Hamas?
Yeah, first I would say it's stunning in terms of the execution. I mean, whether Israel would take the responsibility officially or not, it's obvious that it was done directly or indirectly by Israel. The fact that Israel was able to execute in that kind of timing such a essentially perfect operation in the worst of its enemies is remarkable from in terms of performance, in terms of the ability of the Mossad to reach out and to do what it asked to do. I agree with the previous speaker. It's unlikely, or at least reason commands that it's unlikely for Israel to take responsibility. But at the same time, the credit is so huge domestically that it's almost, even if Israel officially will not take responsibility, as I assume that would happen, Benjamin Netanyahu would make all possible ways to take credit for the operation. Now, in terms of significance, it's a huge. It could be a game changer, but it's very difficult to predict essentially how things could unfold. It's a very critical moment. Essentially, Hamas has two critical bases of power. One in Gaza itself, which is Yahya Sinwar, and the other one, the international, with Ismail Haniyeh. Who was actually previously, until 2017, he was essentially the prime minister under the Hamas in Gaza. Ismail Haniyeh is the older, is the most senior, is the true leader, even though his involvement, direct involvement in October 7th and after was to a degree diminishing. How it's going to change the power structure within the Hamas is very intriguing. Obviously, Sinwar remains the only survivor so far in Gaza itself, in the tunnels. What would be the impact on the negotiation, which right now in a critical moment for the release of the hostages, it's difficult to say. As the previous speaker said, Israel within 2 days were able to take two major enemies, one in Lebanon, Hezbollah, and the other one all the way in Tehran. So it's dramatic, it's stunning, but it's truly, since it happened just very shortly, it's difficult to give predictions how it might go. Unfold.
Absolutely, sir. Now, just for better understanding here, of course, we know that ever since the strikes on the Golan Heights, there has been increased fear of a wider war. We've seen that Ismail Haniyeh was attending the Iranian president's inauguration, was killed in Tehran. So I wanted to understand, how do you assess Iran's response to this? And also, we've seen ever since the weekend strikes, diplomatic efforts have increased. The United States sprung into action. It's trying to avert a wider war. So how do you assess the role of the United States as well?
It's extremely complicated. I think that Iran would have a very strong pressure to respond. It happened in its own territory, an official guest for an official ceremony, the inauguration of the new president. Iran was supposed to provide protection. It failed. Iran would have to respond. And there were calls in Israel, by the way, for in the last few weeks, in particular in the last 2 weeks, to make a pressure on Iran itself. So it's not just Hamas. It's not just Haniyeh. It's also Iran, and it's demonstration that Israel can hit specific targeted inside Tehran. What would be the Iranian response? It's very difficult to say. As you say, we just inauguration of a new government. It could lead to an effort to go to a regional war. I doubt how much outside forces, such as the United States, may have some impact. Uh, as we recall, President Biden said immediately after October 7 dawned, and indeed it had an impact on Iran then. I'm doubtful it could have impact now. Iran did fail when it attacked Israel in reference to the attack on the adjacent to the embassy in Syria. It sent hundreds of all sorts of drones and missiles and cruise missiles, and primarily it failed. Whether Iran would try to do it again, it's unclear. It will take every party to have reckoning and to have to think about it. So I think I don't think would be any immediate response within the next 24 to 48 hours,
All right.
possibly even after that.
All right, sir. Now, also, I wanted to ask you about the strategic importance, considering that you mentioned that Iran failed to protect here. How do you assess the strategic importance of the manner and the timing in which this strike happened?
Well, psychologically and politically, it was very much a demonstration beyond the Israel commitment, avowal to terminate the life, to kill all the leaders of Hamas who were involved directly and indirectly in the massacre of October 7th. And obviously, Ismail Haniyeh is essentially the next to Yahya Sinwar. But its ability to make that kind of operation in Tehran, most likely by various kind of proxies, various kind of elements, Iranian element that work with Israel, but to do it in relatively amazing timing, to have the intelligence, to have the technology, to have the dare, and to be so precise in terms of the target. Essentially, as I understand it, was only Haniyeh and his bodyguard. The psychological and political impact beyond just the concrete results of eliminating that individual is enormous. And that's why I think Iran will have to respond. I think it's very, very difficult at this point to try to give. There could be all sorts of scenarios.
Right.
One need to know more details, and it's still just unfolding news, and we don't know enough. So I wouldn't dare to try to give a specific scenario. I'm saying it's stunning. I'm saying it has the potential to be a game changer.
Absolutely.
And definitely it bring, just to finish, and definitely it bring Israel that needed to have more sense of self-confidence and encouragement to its own morale, a great deal of boost.
Absolutely, Dr. Cohen, developments are still just pouring in. The situation is still unfolding. But just for better understanding here, this could pan out in various ways. Do you think this would be the biggest trigger for Iran since the killing of Soleimani?
It may be even strong. It may be even more dramatic than the killing of Soleimani. The killing of Soleimani was on Iraqi soil. It was in a moment of vulnerability. Essentially, he was flying for Damascus back to Iran via Iraq. Here, it was a leader, a guest of the Islamic Republic of Iran inside Tehran, inside the capital. So in many ways, even more dramatic, even though it's not an Iranian personality, Iranian leader, but nevertheless, in terms of the drama, in terms of it's as I said before, it's stunning.
Right, so now coming back to a point that I made earlier as well, and you said this as well, considering even if we were to presume that Israel hasn't taken responsibility, of course it hasn't, and it won't going forward as well, do you think the United States would have been informed of Israel's actions, considering that in recent times we've seen that Israel has kept the United States somewhat guessing what it's going to do next?
It's an intriguing question. I tend to think that it was informed, probably not consulted, but informed very short time before the action was made, and most likely bypassing the administration, the White House itself, the president himself, the National Security Advisor, and very few aides. I think it was highly tightly held. That's my guess, of course.
So, of
I
course,
think it's so dramatic. It's difficult to think that Israel made a decision. I don't think that Israel asked the United States so-called permission to do it, but it's given the special relations. I think Israel informed the United States sometimes before, could be minutes or probably not more than a few hours, possibly even less. And I think it also is to boost Israeli image in the United States, given what happened in the last 9-10 months almost after October 7th. So to boost Israeli image outside, because I think very few, if any, intelligence organizations could take that kind of operation and do it successfully, execute it successfully.
right. So now we've also seen that when it comes to the United States, it's been trying its best to not be in close proximity to Iran in this war. Do you think this incident increases the prospects of that?
It's difficult to say. It very much depends what would be the Iranian response. It's not obvious that if the United States would provide signals, and I think the United States most likely was informed because the United States need to prepare some kind of signaling to Iran. It may be that some of the signaling would not be public, would be very, very private. I also think that in case of Iranian retaliations, just as happened in April, it would be not just Israel itself who will be involved in the defense, but it will be a full apparatus of the United States-led coalition, the same coalition that helped to protect Israel from that previous Iranian attack with those over 300 flying objects. You need some time to prepare that. If you recall at the time it took, I think, about, if I recall correctly, about 10 days after the assassination of that person in the Iranian embassy in Damascus.
Right. I also wanted to clarify for our viewers that, of course, we are waiting for reactions to pour in. The United States reaction has not come, and we are monitoring that closely as well. So now I keep coming back to the same question just for better understanding for our viewers as well. Do you think this will have any sort of bearing on the ongoing war in Gaza?
May well be. May well be. Again, it's difficult to assess. We do not know yet what would be the impact in Gaza itself, not just on Sinwar, who remains now essentially the only leader. Yes, there are others. I mean, Haniyeh was not the only one. There is Khalid Mashal. There are others. But obviously, it changed the very structure of leadership, the very structure of decision making. What would be the impact of the remaining people? I think the pressure and the need for ceasefire may be stronger. As you know, in the various operations that took place in Gaza, essentially Israel has, in the last few weeks, 3 divisions in the Gaza Strip, in addition to the defending divisions inside Israel along the borders of Gaza, along the line of Gaza. And hundreds of Hamas operatives were killed. The sense of attrition, and that's actually led Hamas to make some kind of concession in the last few weeks that they have not done a few months earlier in terms of the negotiations with Israel over the hostages. Essentially, it was Netanyahu who stiffened the Israeli positions in the last few weeks. I think it also may allow Israel to be a little bit more conciliatory because it has that kind of achievement on its side. It boosts the image of the Israeli intelligence everywhere, including in Gaza itself. So again, it may have major impact. But again, it's difficult right now to see the specifics because all kind of scenarios may happen. Nobody can predict exactly the future.
Absolutely. Dr. Cohen, well, thank you so much for your insights on this. Do stay on with us. For latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.